The sky above Erythra was a deep shade of violet, stretching endlessly over cities that glittered like scattered jewels. From the ground, the world looked peaceful, almost too perfect. The people of Erythra had lived for centuries in harmony, advancing in science and art while never touching war. Their scientists had unlocked energy systems, their artists created wonders, and their children grew up in fields where danger was almost unheard of. Life was safe, predictable, and beautiful. But that calm was about to shatter. One morning, the surface of Erythra trembled as enormous shapes appeared in orbit. Warships, black and gleaming, hovered silently over the major cities. They were massive, far larger than anything the Erythrans had ever imagined. The skies, once filled with soft colors and gentle sunlight, now reflected the cold glint of metal and the threat of annihilation. Panic rippled through the population as alarms echoed across cities. Families huddled together, unsure of what to do. The elders knew one thing. These were not explorers. These were invaders. The leaders of Erythra convened immediately. In the grand chamber of the central palace, Counselor Myra spoke with urgency, her voice trembling. "We have no army strong enough to resist them. Our weapons are for defense, not destruction. We cannot fight this alone." Her words echoed against the marble walls, carrying despair to every corner of the room. Her counterpart, Counselor Denar, paced nervously. "Then we must call for help. We send messages to every known ally. Perhaps the galaxy will hear our plea and send reinforcements." And so, the Erythrans did what they had never done before. Their scientists gathered communication arrays and sent a distress signal across light years of space. The message was simple yet desperate. "We are under attack. Our people cannot survive alone. Please, we beg for aid." They expected polite replies, perhaps a fleet of diplomats, or at most, soldiers trained for conventional warfare. What they received was something entirely different. In the dark void beyond Erythra, a fleet of ships moved like shadows across the stars. Their hulls were scratched and scarred from centuries of survival on the most dangerous planets. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were humanity's Deathworlders, a legendary force feared and respected across the galaxy. They were trained to survive on worlds where nothing else could, bred to endure poisons, extreme temperatures, and unimaginable hazards. Every mission they undertook was a challenge that would kill ordinary beings without a second thought. The fleet slowed as it approached Erythra. Commander K.L. Var stood on the bridge of the lead ship, eyes scanning the planet below. His face was calm, almost cold, but there was a spark of interest in his gaze. For K.L., Erythra was just another challenge, another puzzle to solve. He did not know the culture, the people, or the value they placed on life, but he understood survival, and he understood victory. And when he received the Erythran plea, he knew exactly what to do. As the Deathworlders prepared to land, the people of Erythra watched from the streets, their fear mingled with awe. These humans were unlike anyone they had encountered. Their armor was dark and angular. Their weapons, unlike anything the Erythrans had seen. Some could barely breathe when the soldiers emerged from their ships, towering and imposing, their movements precise, purposeful, and deadly. Kale and his team moved through the landing zones with silent efficiency. They assessed the cities, noting weak points, probable invasion routes, and areas that could be defended. The Erythrans followed them, unsure whether to trust these terrifying beings. Counselor Myra approached Kale cautiously. You are here to help us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale turned, his eyes sharp and calculating. "We are here to survive. You will learn to defend yourselves, or you will die. There is no other way." The bluntness of his words startled the counselors, but they had no choice but to accept. Kale wasted no time. He divided his soldiers into squads and began training the Erythrans, showing them how to fortify buildings, create traps, and move silently in dangerous terrain. What the people of Erythra lacked in strength, the Deathworlders compensated with guidance and strategy. Slowly, fear began to mix with hope. Meanwhile, scouts reported alien movements. The invaders were not foolish. They had expected resistance. But the arrival of these humans changed everything. The Deathworlders adapted to the environment instantly, turning the natural landscape into a weapon. Ravines became choke points, forests became ambush zones, and rivers were manipulated to slow the enemy advance. The Erythrans watched as KL led a small strike team against a group of alien invaders. The humans moved with a combination of calculated precision and instinctive ferocity. In a matter of hours, they dismantled the enemy forces, taking no prisoners, but leaving enough evidence of power to terrify. When the team returned, the Erythrans were in disbelief. "How can they do this?" one whispered. "They survive where no one else can, and they fight like nothing we have ever seen." Kale, observing their amazement, allowed himself a small nod. Survival was in humanity's nature, and he would prove it here, on this fragile world. Every encounter, every strategy, every moment of danger would demonstrate that humans were capable of things no other species could imagine. As night fell over Erythra, the invaders regrouped, unaware that their prey was no longer weak. Humanity had arrived, and with them came the force of the Deathworlders. The Erythrons looked to the stars with a mix of fear and fascination, realizing that help had come, but in a way they could never have imagined. These humans were not just saviors, they were legends, warriors who thrived where death was certain, and they had chosen to fight for a world that was once defenseless. And deep within Kael Var's mind, a thought lingered. Survival was not about mercy. It was about strength, cunning, and determination. The Erythrans would learn that quickly, and so would their enemies. Humanity had come to Erythra, not for diplomacy, not for peace, but to show the galaxy that even in the darkest corners, the impossible could be overcome. The next morning, Erythra woke to a world that had changed overnight. The skies were still filled with the shadows of alien warships, but the people were no longer paralyzed with fear. They had humans now, Deathworlders, warriors who seemed to move as if danger was their natural home. Everywhere the humans went, there was action. They didn't talk about diplomacy or ask for permission, they acted. Their presence was overwhelming, a mixture of awe and intimidation. Kael Var moved through the city with his squad, observing everything with sharp eyes. The Erythrans followed, careful not to get in the way, but desperate to understand how these humans could be so efficient. Kael stopped at the edge of a ravine near the city, where alien scouts had been spotted the previous night. "We'll make this a trap," he said, his voice low and calm. "They'll come this way. We'll be ready." He divided the squad into small units, each responsible for a specific task. Some were to dig hidden trenches, others to camouflage weapons and explosives, and a few were assigned to scout the enemy approach. The Erythrans tried to help, but even their simplest attempts at digging or hiding weapons seemed clumsy compared to the humans' precision. Kael watched them patiently, correcting mistakes and teaching them proper techniques. "You move quietly," he instructed. "Every sound can give you away. Every mistake can cost lives." Despite his harsh words, the Erythrans began to learn quickly. Under the Deathworlders' guidance, they discovered they could adapt in ways they never imagined. Walls were reinforced, streets were blocked with obstacles, and hidden sniper positions were prepared. The humans were relentless, pushing the Erythrans to think and act faster than ever before. Some of the people were frightened, but others began to feel a strange surge of confidence. Perhaps they could survive this. Perhaps they could fight. The first engagement came at midday. Scouts reported a small alien force moving toward the city. Kael immediately organized an ambush. The Deathworlders positioned themselves in hidden locations, blending into the terrain with ease. The Erythrans, following their instructions, stayed close but hidden, watching the humans at work. When the aliens arrived, the humans struck with precision. Explosives hidden along the path detonated, causing the invaders to scatter. Kale led a rapid assault, striking with weapons and hand-to-hand techniques that seemed impossible to the Erythrans. The aliens were strong, but they were not prepared for the Deathworlders. Within hours, the alien scouts were defeated, leaving a message of warning in the form of debris and broken armor. The Erythrans could hardly believe what they saw. How can they move so fast? How can they survive their own traps? Whispered one young engineer. Another replied, "They are not like any being we have ever seen. They are different." Kale allowed himself a brief nod, but did not celebrate. There was more work to do. He knew the invaders would return, stronger and with more resources. This was just the beginning, he told the Erythrans. They will come back. When they do, we must be ready. Over the next days, Kale and his team continued to train the Erythrans. They taught them to move silently through forests, to set traps that could disable or redirect enemies, and to use the environment as a weapon. Rivers became natural barriers. Cliffs were used as vantage points, and even the wind was considered in planning attacks. Erythrans, who had never held a weapon, now moved with a sense of purpose and caution. Fear was still there, but it was mixed with determination. Kale also observed his own team. Each Deathworlder had survived battles that would have destroyed most species. They were not merely soldiers. They were engineers, strategists, and survivors rolled into one. They knew instinctively how to read the enemy, anticipate attacks, and exploit weaknesses. Erythrans could only watch and learn, absorbing lessons that might save their lives. One evening, a group of Erythran children wandered near the outskirts of the training area, drawn by curiosity. Kale noticed them and approached. He could have sent them away harshly, but instead he knelt and spoke simply. Curiosity is not wrong, but the world is dangerous. Learn from what you see, but do not rush into danger. The children nodded, eyes wide, understanding that even the smallest mistake could be deadly. Meanwhile, alien reinforcements began arriving. Larger ships appeared in orbit, signaling a more significant attack. Kale studied their patterns carefully. He knew the aliens would underestimate humans again, they always did. That was the advantage. Humans thrived where others failed. They did not fear death. They understood it, accepted it, and used it as a tool against their enemies. When the next wave landed, Kale led the defense personally. The Deathworlders moved like shadows, striking with unmatched precision. The Erythrans, now trained enough to hold positions and use basic tactics, followed orders without hesitation. Explosions rocked the terrain. Alien weapons failed to break the defense, and the humans seemed unstoppable. For every alien that attacked, 2 were met with strategy and cunning. At one point, Kyle faced an alien warrior twice his size. The Erythrans held their breath as the battle unfolded. The aliens struck with raw strength, but Kale's movements were calculated, almost artistic in their precision. He dodged, countered, and disarmed the enemy in a way that seemed impossible. The Erythrans cheered quietly, realizing that humans were not just survivors, they were masters of combat, able to turn the impossible into victory. After the battle, Kale gathered the Erythrans. "You are learning," he said. "You can survive. You can fight. But remember this: survival is not given. It is earned. Every moment, every decision. The galaxy is dangerous. If you wish to live, you must adapt." That night, the Erythrans looked at their city with new eyes. Buildings that had once seemed fragile now seemed fortified. Streets that had been simple paths now had strategic importance. And the humans, terrifying and awe-inspiring, moved through their world like shadows of power. Kale watched the stars from the edge of the city. knowing this was only the beginning. The real challenge was coming. The alien fleet was large, cunning, and relentless. But Kale also knew something the aliens did not. Humans were not bound by fear or rules. They thrived where others failed. They were death-defying, unpredictable, and unstoppable when pushed. The Erythrans had asked for help, hoping for safety. Instead, they received something far greater: humans who could face death itself and turn it into survival. And as KL prepared his team for the battles ahead, the people of Erythra began to understand what it meant to truly fight alongside humanity. They were no longer just witnesses. They were part of a force the galaxy would soon fear, a force that thrived where death ruled. And in that moment, under a sky still filled with alien ships, Erythra dared to hope. Not for peace, not for negotiation, but for victory. Humanity had arrived, and with them came the power to change the fate of their world forever. The days passed in a tense rhythm. The Erythrans, once fragile and uncertain, now moved with purpose. Every street, every hill, every forest edge had been fortified under Kale's guidance. The Deathworlders were relentless, and their presence was transforming the planet into something no invader could easily conquer. Yet, despite the preparation, Kale knew the real test was coming. Reports came in from scouts. The alien forces were gathering in massive numbers, bringing with them creatures and machines that defied Erythran imagination. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were bioengineered monstrosities, fast, strong, and resistant to the weapons the Erythrans had once trusted. Some could survive in extreme heat, others in freezing cold, and some could even manipulate the environment to attack. The invaders had adapted, and now the challenge for humanity was more than just strategy. It was survival against the impossible. Kale assembled his team. "They have changed the game," he said, his voice steady and cold. "These creatures are dangerous, but they are predictable if you think like them. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to survive and win. Remember, the galaxy does not favor the weak. We will adapt, and we will prevail." The Deathworlders moved like shadows across the planet, preparing for the inevitable clash. They set traps in valleys where the alien monstrosities would stumble, fortified choke points, and created hidden lines of fire. Every step was calculated, every placement purposeful. The Erythrans watched, some inspired, others still trembling at the sight of humans operating in such deadly precision. Yet, KL allowed them to participate, giving them small tasks that taught lessons in survival. The people of Erythra were beginning to understand that even the most dangerous enemy could be confronted with planning, courage, and ingenuity. The first wave arrived at dawn. A line of monstrous aliens, some towering above the tallest trees, marched toward the human and Erythran defenses. Kale's squad waited silently. As the creatures entered the trap zones, explosives hidden beneath soil and rock detonated, toppling several of the invaders. The Deathworlders struck immediately after, their movements fast and precise. The aliens were strong, but they were not prepared for humans who thrived on survival. The Erythrans, watching from fortified positions, gasped as humans fought hand-to-hand with creatures that would have killed ordinary beings instantly. Kale's team moved as one, anticipating attacks, dodging lethal strikes, and striking back with devastating efficiency. Even when creatures fell, more took their place, but the humans adapted as they always did. Every battle became a lesson in resilience, showing the Erythrans that survival was not about strength alone, but about intelligence, courage, and timing. One Erythran soldier, Lyra, had been skeptical from the start. She had feared that no amount of guidance could prepare them for these monsters. But now, as she watched humans fight, she began to understand. They moved as if danger was natural, as if the impossible was their playground. And when Kale gave orders, the Deathworlders executed them perfectly, turning the battlefield into a landscape of controlled chaos. Lyra found herself copying their movements, her hands shaking but her mind focused. The battle raged for hours. The alien monstrosities were relentless, yet the humans and Erythrans held the line. Kale led a small team deep into enemy ranks, targeting the creature's command nodes. Using strategy and cunning, they disabled key systems, turning the tide of battle. The Erythrans watched in awe as humans, facing overwhelming odds, seemed almost unstoppable. Every move was calculated, yet instinctive. Every risk was taken with precision, ensuring survival while maximizing impact. In the midst of battle, Kale noticed a group of alien beasts heading toward a civilian sector. Without hesitation, he signaled a squad to intercept. They moved swiftly, cutting through alien lines, protecting the Erythran population with a combination of speed and strategy. The Erythrans who witnessed this could not believe their eyes. These humans were not just fighters, they were guardians, willing to face death to protect others. By the end of the day, the alien forces had been repelled, but the cost was clear. The land bore scars of battle, trees were torn, and buildings damaged. The Erythrans mourned their losses, but also realized something remarkable. They had survived. And they had survived because humans had taught them how to fight, how to think, and how to endure. That night, Kale walked among the Erythrans, observing their reactions. He did not speak much. His team gathered in a nearby camp, preparing for the next wave. Kale knew the battle was far from over. The aliens would regroup, learn from their mistakes, and strike again. But he also knew that humanity thrived in these conditions. Deathworlders did not simply survive, they adapted, learned, and became stronger with each encounter. Lyra approached Kale cautiously. "Commander, we never imagined anyone could fight like this. You make it seem possible for us too." Kale studied her quietly. "You can survive," he said finally. "Not because I am here, but because you are learning. Fear is natural, courage is learned, and survival is earned." The Erythrans began to take pride in their progress. They trained harder, listened more carefully, and participated actively in every defensive preparation. Under the guidance of the Deathworlders, they discovered that even creatures designed to be invincible could be overcome with strategy, patience, and determination. The planet was changing not just in defense, but in spirit. Its people were growing stronger, braver, and wiser than ever before. The aliens, meanwhile, were confused. They had never faced humans like this. They expected fear, surrender, or failure. Instead, they met resistance that was precise, intelligent, and terrifyingly efficient. Every encounter taught the Deathworlders more about the enemy, and every victory showed the Erythrans that survival was not impossible. The message was clear. Humanity did not bend to threat, and those who underestimated them paid dearly. As Kale prepared his team for the coming days, he reflected on what he had seen. The Erythrans were learning to fight, yes. But more importantly, they were learning to endure. Survival was more than a physical challenge. It was a test of mind, will, and spirit. And in that test, humans excelled. They did not rely solely on strength or weapons. They relied on adaptability, courage, and the refusal to accept defeat. The next battle would be harder. The aliens would come with greater force, smarter tactics, and deadlier creatures. But Kale was ready. His team was ready. And now, the Erythrans, once fragile and fearful, were ready as well. They had seen what humans could do, and they were learning that even in the face of overwhelming odds, victory was possible. Under the violet sky of Erythra, the planet held its breath. The future was uncertain, but hope had returned. Not hope for safety, but hope for survival. And when the next wave of invaders struck, they would discover that humanity had arrived, And with them came the force of Deathworlders, warriors who thrived where death seemed certain, and who would never back down. For the first time in centuries, Erythra was not alone. They had allies who could not be defeated easily. They had humans who embodied the power of survival itself. And they had a chance to fight, not just to live, but to stand against the galaxy's most fearsome threats. The alien forces were relentless. Days passed with small skirmishes, each one testing the limits of Erythran courage and human skill. But the invaders were learning too. Their creatures adapted. Their machines became smarter, and their attacks more coordinated. Kael'var knew that the next assault would not just test their defenses, it would test their very ability to survive. The Deathworlders gathered quietly before dawn, their armor reflecting the first light of the violet sky. Each soldier was calm, focused, their eyes scanning maps and battle plans. Kael moved among them, checking equipment, giving concise instructions, and observing the Erythrans who had joined the ranks. The people of Erythra had changed since the first attacks. No longer were they paralyzed by fear. They moved with purpose, carrying weapons, setting traps, and assisting the Deathworlders in ways that saved lives and slowed the enemy. When the alien fleet approached, the planet seemed to hold its breath. Kael had divided the forces into layers of defense, each designed to slow, confuse, and destroy the invaders. Rivers had been dammed to create natural barriers. Forests had been filled with hidden ambush points, and the ground itself was rigged with concealed traps. The Deathworlders moved with silent coordination, communicating with hand signals and subtle gestures, while the Erythrans followed instructions with growing confidence. The first wave of creatures fell into the traps as planned. Explosions echoed through the valleys, and ambush squads struck with precision. The aliens were powerful, but they were not prepared for humans who treated danger as a tool, a puzzle to solve. Kael led a small squad deeper into the enemy lines, targeting their command and control units. Every move was calculated, every risk measured, and yet executed with speed and confidence that seemed impossible. The Erythrans watched in awe as humans faced creatures designed to kill instantly, using every advantage the environment provided. Kael and his squad survived storms of alien attacks, maneuvered through toxic terrain, and struck decisively where the invaders were weakest. Each victory was a lesson for the Erythrans, who began to realize that survival was more than weapons or strength, it was intelligence, courage, and adaptability. Amid the chaos, a group of alien monstrosities broke through the secondary defenses, heading toward a civilian sector. Kael noticed immediately and signaled a rapid response team. The humans moved like shadows, intercepting the creatures before they could reach innocent lives. The Erythrans who witnessed this could hardly believe what they were seeing. Humans did not just fight. They protected, planned, and adapted under pressure that would have frozen any other species. The battle escalated further when the alien flagship descended from orbit, its weapons capable of devastating entire districts. Kael realized that brute force alone would not win this fight. Strategy was key. He and his team moved swiftly to coordinate the defense, using every advantage of the terrain, predicting alien maneuvers, and setting traps that forced the flagship to retreat. The Deathworlders were not merely surviving, they were controlling the battlefield, shaping the conflict to their will. Lyra, now one of the more confident Erythran fighters, watched Kael and understood something vital. Humans did not simply react to danger. They anticipated it, prepared for it, and used it to their advantage. The creatures that had once terrified her now seemed manageable under their guidance. For the first time, she felt a spark of pride. She realized she could fight, she could survive, and perhaps even help others do the same. The aliens, frustrated and confused, sent wave after wave of reinforcements. But each time, the Deathworlders adapted. They used the environment to funnel enemies into kill zones, manipulated terrain to slow advances, and combined technology and strategy in ways no other species could. Even when outnumbered, the humans and Erythrans held strong. Survival was not guaranteed, but it was possible because of the Deathworlders' presence and leadership. Kale, always observing, noted the alien tactics. They were intelligent, but predictable. That predictability was humanity's advantage. By understanding the enemy, the Deathworlders turned each attack into a lesson, a means to improve defenses and train the Erythrans further. Every battle made them stronger. Every challenge made them wiser. The planet itself became a fortress, designed not just to hold, but to break the enemy. As night fell, Kael gathered the Erythrans and his team. The battlefield was littered with evidence of the struggle-fallen creatures, destroyed machines, and scorched earth, but the people were alive. They had survived where others would have perished. Kael's eyes swept over them, noting the changes in posture, in confidence, in determination. "This is not victory yet," he said. "The enemy will return. But today, you fought. You survived. And that is the first step toward winning." For the Erythrans, it was a revelation. They had asked for help, and humans had arrived. But these humans did not fight like any ally they had known. They thrived in danger, embraced it, and used it to create opportunity. The Deathworlders were not just soldiers, they were legends in motion, proof that survival and strength could exist in ways no other species had imagined. The following days were spent preparing for the inevitable next wave. Kael continued to teach, moving among Erythran fighters and Deathworlders alike. The planet was transforming, not just physically, but mentally. Erythrans, who had once fled from shadows, now moved with purpose and courage. They learned patience, timing, and strategy. They learned that survival required more than tools, it required intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to act under pressure. When the next alien assault came, the humans and Erythrans were ready. The Deathworlders moved like coordinated shadows, striking with precision. The Erythrans held positions, executed commands, and watched the humans in awe. For the first time, they were not victims. They were participants in a battle that would determine the fate of their planet. By the end of the day, the alien fleet had suffered heavy losses. The invaders began retreating, but Kael knew this was only temporary. The aliens would regroup, stronger and more cunning. But the message had been sent. Erythra would not fall easily. Humanity had arrived, and with them came warriors who could survive where others failed. Warriors who could turn death into opportunity. Kael looked out over the battlefield as night fell, the violet sky reflecting the scars of war. The Erythrans, weary but alive, began to understand what they had witnessed. Humans were not simply fighters, they were symbols of what was possible. Survival, courage, and adaptability were not just traits, but tools. And the galaxy would learn, sooner or later, that when humanity fought, the impossible became possible. Even as the alien fleet disappeared into the distance, Kael knew the war was far from over. Yet he also knew something vital. Humanity did not fear the impossible. They thrived in it. They adapted to it. And through them, the Erythrans had learned that even the most terrifying threat could be overcome. The planet was battered, but hope burned brighter than ever. The Deathworlders had arrived, and with them, a force no enemy could underestimate. And in that hope, the people of Erythra realized they were no longer helpless, they had humans fighting beside them, and that meant they had a chance to survive the darkness to come. The alien fleet returned in full force, darkening the skies over Erythra like a storm that refused to break. Their numbers were immense, and their bioengineered creatures were faster, stronger, and more relentless than ever. But Kael'var and the Deathworlders were ready. They had prepared the planet with layers of defenses, trained the Erythrans in survival and combat, and learned the alien strategies through previous battles. Kale surveyed the horizon from the highest ridge, his eyes sharp and calculating. He had spent every day preparing for this moment. Every trap, every ambush, every defensive line had been designed to give the humans and Erythrans the greatest advantage. "Remember," he said to his squad, "this is the final test. They believe they can overwhelm us. But we are not ordinary soldiers. We are Deathworlders. We thrive where others fall. Today, we prove it." The Deathworlders moved silently, taking positions across the battlefield. The Erythrans, now confident and disciplined, followed without hesitation. They knew their place in the plan, understood their tools, and trusted the humans who had taught them to fight. For the first time, the planet itself seemed alive with purpose. Each valley, river, and forest prepared to aid in survival and victory. When the alien fleet descended, chaos erupted. Explosions shook the ground. Monstrous creatures charged forward. And machines fired destructive energy beams. But the Deathworlders moved like shadows through the storm. They anticipated every attack, redirected enemies into traps, and struck where the aliens were weakest. Every tactic they used had been refined over previous battles, and every move demonstrated why humans were feared across the galaxy. Kale led a small strike team into the heart of the alien forces. Their mission was simple, but deadly: disrupt the enemy's command and control. Using terrain, strategy, and their own skill, the humans moved undetected through the chaos. Alien soldiers fell without warning. Their attacks countered before they even began. Every victory sent ripples across the battlefield, demoralizing the enemy and inspiring the Erythrans, who watched in awe. For the Erythrans, the battle was almost unbelievable. Creatures that had seemed invincible were falling to humans who thrived under danger. The Deathworlders were more than warriors. They were masters of survival, capable of using intelligence, courage, and adaptability to turn even hopeless situations into victories. And as they fought, the Erythrans learned, too. They moved with precision, defended their positions, and assisted in ways that had been unimaginable weeks ago. The alien flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons, descended over the city center. It unleashed a storm of fire that threatened to destroy everything. Kale quickly assessed the situation and acted. He coordinated teams to draw its attention, manipulate the environment, and disable its weapons systems. The Deathworlders worked in perfect synchronization, each action complementing the others, while the Erythrans watched and followed orders without hesitation. The battle reached its climax when Kale and his strike team infiltrated the alien flagship. Moving silently through corridors filled with alien technology and deadly traps, they disabled the ship's power core. The resulting chain reaction sent the vessel into a spiraling crash, scattering the remaining forces and leaving the aliens leaderless. On the ground, the remaining invaders were either captured, neutralized, or fled into the stars, never to return. When the dust settled, Erythra was scarred but alive. Buildings were damaged, forests were torn, and the rivers ran red with the remnants of battle. But the planet had survived. The Erythrans gathered in the streets, exhausted but relieved. They looked at the humans, the Deathworlders who had fought beside them, and saw not only warriors but legends. These humans had come from across the galaxy to face impossible odds, and they had triumphed. Kale surveyed the scene, his expression calm but satisfied. He had fulfilled his mission. The Erythrans were safe, their planet defended, and their people had learned what survival truly meant. "This is your world now," he said to the counselors and fighters who had grown under his guidance. "You have learned to fight, to adapt, and to survive. The galaxy will test you again. But now you know what it means to endure." The Erythrans began to understand that they were no longer helpless. Humanity had shown them a way to face impossible odds, to turn fear into courage, and to transform survival into strength. The Deathworlders had not just defended them, they had inspired them, proving that determination, intelligence, and resilience could overcome even the deadliest threats. Lyra, now standing among the Erythran fighters, looked at Kale with admiration. "We could never have done this without you," she said quietly. Kale nodded. "You did it yourselves," he replied. "I only showed you the way. Survival is in your hands now." The aliens had been defeated. But the story of this battle would spread across the galaxy. Other species would learn that when humans arrived, the impossible could become possible. Deathworlders were more than soldiers. They were proof that humanity thrived where others fell, that survival was not just instinct but skill, and that courage could inspire even the weakest species to rise and defend themselves. As Kale prepared to leave Erythra with his team, the Erythrans gathered to express their gratitude. It was not just for saving their lives, but for showing them a new way to live and fight. The planet had changed not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. Its people were stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. From the ridge overlooking the city, Kyle watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of violet and gold. He knew that Erythra would face challenges again, but it would face them differently now. Humanity had arrived, and with it came the proof that survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was about confronting it, mastering it, and growing stronger through it. The Deathworlders boarded their ships, leaving behind a planet transformed. The Erythrans would never forget what had happened here. They would tell stories of humans who fought where death seemed certain, of warriors who turned impossible battles into triumphs, and of a species that thrived in ways no one else could. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would remember it forever. As the ships vanished into the stars, Kale thought of the next challenge, the next planet, and the next impossible mission. Deathworlders thrived on the edge of danger, and the galaxy was full of worlds that would test them. But wherever they went, the message was clear. When humanity arrived, survival, courage, and victory followed. And Erythra, once a fragile planet pleading for help, now stood as a testament to what could be achieved when the impossible was faced with determination and human ingenuity. The planet had been saved, not just by weapons or strength, but by the unyielding will of humans who thrived where others would fall. The stars above glittered like a promise. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's power, and the Erythrans knew they would never be the same. The Deathworlders had left, but their legacy remained. A planet once helpless had learned to fight. A species once fragile had learned to endure. And all of it had been possible because humanity, in its most formidable form, had answered the call. Erythra was alive. Its people were stronger. And humanity had proven, once again, that no matter how impossible the odds, humans could survive, adapt, and triumph.